Simon Lederman Show, BBC London 94.9. And I'm delighted to say that in the next hour, we're in the company of Stephen Allen, who's a comedian and also has been on the show, I think, just once before. You were on.
Yeah, just the once.
It's good to have you back.
It's nice to be back.
And Jamie Kelsey-Fry, who we sometimes perceive as a bit of a comedian because you always have we believe you have the answers to the world's problems, but it's very good to see you. You are contributing editor to New Internationalist magazine, of which I received a copy the last year, a couple of 3 weeks ago. And it is a very good read, and I will give you that in my honest opinion.
Great.
It's good to have you both in tonight.
Pleasure.
Hottest day for 10 years in the southeast.
Yeah.
Are we enjoying it?
Yes, I mean, even though I'm northern and therefore not used to anything that's normally warm, my word, it was. I mean, I know it was hot, but I didn't do anything all day. Although, stupidly, I went for a run about 1 o'clock, which is
the
that
worst
the hottest?
time. Mad Dogs and Englishmen, etc.
Well, there we go. Let's check my passport next time I'm in a tube station.
The
there
worst
we go.
time. The worst. Yes, just have a pair of jogging bottoms in the middle of the day. You'll
I went
be
running
fine.
out in the middle of the day. Let me through.
They'll leave you alone. Gosh, that's incredibly brave.
Not really. I mean, there's a lot of shade where I run, and I'm not Mr. Athlete, so it's a whole lot of running and then panting a lot. So
Right.
It's fine. But I enjoy it. I do like a good sweat, and there's an image that no one needed.
Indeed. Unfortunately, with radio, they're just making up those pictures. Jamie, are you suffering or you're enjoying, celebrating?
Well, I'm loving it, actually. I used to live in Bangkok in the late 80s for 3 years, and what it does to people is it puts everyone in a much more sort of relaxed, slow-motion kind of lifestyle. London's a very fast city, and people are much more laid back during the heat.
But it's fascinating thinking that actually in this, I mean, I was saying earlier on, I feel a huge amount of lethargy, and I guess in countries where it's like this all the time, but you think of Cyprus and Greece and Spain, I mean, clearly their economies may be suffering for other reasons, but you kind of think when the heat's out, you don't want to do a thing.
Well, that's what the siesta is, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, when it's really hot, then everyone goes to sleep, which makes a lot of sense. But what I like, actually, because I'm a cyclist, is people get very moody in London streets. I know your listeners will know this, but there's something about the sun that makes people a little less moody and angry. And so usually when the weather's worse, people are cutting in front of each other and driving dangerously. And now they're kind of, nah, come on, they're just stopping, letting you go by.
Manana.
Yeah, exactly. It's lovely to see. It's very bright.
I find it interesting watching any live television during weather like this, particularly if you catch the news, because what happens is instead of countries from around the world, you see these beautiful scenes of great weather in LA or in Sydney. It's quite dull London streets and stories about parking, but in glamorous Hollywood weather,
Yeah,
which is exactly what we should have all the time.
They should just use that stock footage for the rest of the year.
Forever, make us all feel a lot better. Anyway, it's great to have you both in. Can I just briefly, because you mentioned you're a fan of cycling, Ride London, which is an event this weekend, 3rd and 4th of August, of great enjoyment and excitement to cyclists, and we're going to try and get some on during the programme, but obviously of concern for road users. What are your feelings on this? Because you do cycle, don't you?
All the time, yeah. It's brilliant. It's because of the love of my life, Anita Dillon. She introduced me to cycling when I met her about 5 years ago, and all my mates, our first holiday was a 450-mile bike ride, and all my mates were going, does she realise that you're very likely to need an ambulance after a mile? And actually, it was the best holiday I've ever had.
Those who cycle together stay together, is that
that's the way it works. That's the way it's worked out with us.
Wow.
But I think it's a fantastic way to see London, particularly if you're not in a total hurry, because you get to explore the side streets, because you see a very different London. All the shortcuts are kind of down all the back streets and things. And, if you're at the lights and you go, that's interesting, what's that? I've never been down there. You can just, amble down there on the bike.
But this is a problem, ambling. This is what the drivers don't like, ambling. You can't amble.
Well, I was more surprised that you just described a cyclist at the lights. I think a few people...
Yeah, no, I'm
great.
certainly
Wait, are you sure?
Yeah, those cyclists who go through lights, I think that's really, really dodgy indeed.
Unless they're green.
Gives a bad name.
Yeah.
I know, yeah. that's very hot
Don't
weather.
be so harsh. Gosh, I thought you were a freedom man. Anyway, look, we're going to take your calls through the hour, indeed, as we always do. We take your calls from 10 until 1, Monday to Thursday on BBC London 94.9, but also we'll get some of your take on some of the stories of the day. Actually, talking of kind of roads and various other things, can we talk, Stephen, about the councils bringing in a huge amount of money in parking, particularly surplus money?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you've ever parked. I think most people might have done and had to pay for it. It seems to be, I think the word would be expensive. And what they've managed to do, it turns out that this is bringing in a whole lot of money for them. They're bringing in, of all the top places that are managing to make a surplus out of the parking, London boroughs take up, I think it's 8 out of the top 10 places. A lot of money coming in. And it's so London tops the list. Councils raking in more than £560 million in surplus. And instead of thinking, oh, I know, we seem to be making enough money out of this, why don't we not charge as much and let people park? Apparently, no, they just keep the money and say, oh, no, we're going to be spending it on other things, and then there's no real evidence about where it's going to.
And which they can't do. It shouldn't be used for anything else other than the roads, is the deal, I think they get.
They were listing things like concessions on bus journeys. So every time you get, you have to, indeed, every time you get a parking fine, you should pay it and smile because you're letting an old person get a bus pass. Apparently.
Well, that's quite a nice thought.
It's a nice thought if someone actually did the maths. I don't know, it just seems like parking, when owned by councils, in my point of view, shouldn't just be allowed to let the market set the price. Because that's what they're doing. It's like, oh, this is a car park and it is full, so let's increase the price until we just about get it full. We maximise profit. Great microeconomics, brilliant. Some lecturer would love that. But that's not the point of a car park, is it? To make loads of money? I don't know. Is anyone? I don't think that's the point of a car park, is it? To make loads of money out of drivers?
It seems to be, yeah. I mean, it's an absolutely huge business. One of the things they say in the article about how we spend the surplus money is apparently filling in the potholes. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm a cyclist. They don't do that. That's absolutely for sure. They definitely don't fill in the potholes.
Fill them with air. Yeah. But so I think it's wrong. I think you should. I mean, I'm aware what the world's like. You're never going to get anything back that they've taken away. It's like free dentistry on the NHS, wave it, bye-bye. So we're never going to... I don't expect car parks to suddenly be cheaper. But wouldn't it be nice if they're earning these millions of pounds to stop increasing it, or at least just stick it to inflationary increases rather than making parking more expensive every year? And I say this because I have to park at it.
Well, of course, I mean, I'm afraid I go back to the years when I first learnt to drive, which I passed my test in 1986. And when I used to park in places like Wembley, it was 10 pence for, I think, 40 minutes or 20 minutes or half an hour.
Was that back in the day when you said pence as well?
It was, and I did that especially for you. It was 10 pence. And even then it was like, I remember thinking, because before that it had been free.
Wow, so that's a big step.
This was a huge, disgusting move. 10 pence to park your car where before it was free. And actually, of course, now, if you look back, you think, I'll take those days. I'll take 10p. I'll take it back.
High Barnet went up to, I think it was £4.50 the last time I parked there, to be honest.
Successfully, somebody has said this is too much and has taken it to court, and they are going to reduce some of those costs.
Some of them.
Some of them. Jamie, presumably you don't have those issues because you don't drive a car.
Well, I do sometimes when I have to transport equipment, but yeah, it's almost always bicycles. But yeah, I'm horrified at how expensive it is, and also, you know, it's another situation where huge amounts of money seems to be going somewhere that's not back to us, and it's our money. But also, I really like those cities where they're shutting down lots of streets, they're making them pedestrianised or just for bicycles, or they've got great public transport instead, and they discourage cars, you know, in the city as much as possible.
I don't mind areas of London, places like Harrow and Kingston, and I guess, gosh, I'm thinking of somewhere west and east, just to balance it up, but they're the two that I'll go with at the moment, where you have some areas that are car-free, but you still have some kind of transports going through, cars and taxis and maybe buses, but where everything is stopped. I mean, I used to live in Birmingham for a time, and I think there are various streets in London. They keep talking about threatening to pave over Oxford Street and Regent Street. I think it rips the heart out. However polluting, and I'm not a car driver most of the time, however polluting traffic may be, to me it rips out the heart of it.
Is that because you like the image of the street? Because when they pedestrianise an area, it no longer looks like a street,
it's boring.
But
it's dull, isn't it?
You shouldn't necessarily just snarl up an entire city to make it look nice. Although maybe, actually, if they pedestrianise areas, I wonder if we'll lose money on film companies coming here to film for their whatever they're doing in America, and they want something that's quaint.
Who wants a street where there's just,
Yeah. Although I don't mind centres of cities not having cars in them, but you need to get into there, so it's great. Like the tube system, you know, I'm a big fan. But if you need to park at one of the ends of a tube line or one of the further out tube stations to get in because you have to drive to get to there, then don't charge us loads of money to park. That should be cheaper, and then you can tube your way in and not pollute the centre of the city. I don't know, maybe I'm living in a dream world.
Maybe you are, maybe you're not. I mean, it's interesting, because when you go to places like Venice and you can be there and you don't see a car for a week or two or however long you're there, and there's where's the island? And it's somewhere in, is it in...
Christiana?
where there's no cars.
Yeah. If we talk about the Netherlands.
Yeah, there's a few little bits dotted around Europe where there are literally no cars, and you just think, that's quite sweet. It's a novelty. I give you that. It's a novelty. But then once you've been stuck in a place with no cars, it's actually a novelty to start seeing them again. I mean, there is this idea. It's interesting because one of our first callers made, I think, what was a very valid point, and it's something that if you wanted to steal it for an editorial in your magazine, Jamie, I'm sure nobody is going to moan about. And he was saying that, you know, on the one hand, you've got the government saying car figures are up. Let's celebrate that. Brilliant. And you've got the other hand saying, we got a no-car policy. We're going to charge you here. We don't want cars. And you think, well, which is it? And I think that's quite a compelling thought, which I hadn't had.
Yeah. You're not allowed to ever say anything nice about cars. That's the general thing. If they said, oh, we're going to start charging less, this is why this will never happen. If they said we're going to drop the price of car parking, there would be a protest without even thinking it through. It's just, oh, cars are evil. We are making that link. We're never thinking it through.
There are a number of protests, actually, that have been happening over the years about the notorious poisonous air that we've got in London. It's way over the mark of what should be normal for people to be breathing. And so for that, by that token alone, we've got to do something about the cars, to be honest. I mean, okay, Hollywood comes over and they want to make they want a London street that looks like a London street, so they
want a
cars.
Pea Super.
Wow.
But they want a Pea Super.
Surely they could CGI it, can't they?
But actually, our air is completely toxic in this city, and it's very, very likely that young people who are born here, particularly in the centre of London, and they grow up, they're much more likely to be asthmatic.
But why is it worse? Because when I was
about.
growing up, and dare I say it, perhaps when you were growing up, we had 4-star fuel. We had gas-guzzling cars that was turfing out all kinds of carcinogens, far worse than now.
Yeah, of course.
The buses were hideous. I mean, you never wanted to be particularly stuck behind a bus, or indeed taxis were awful. Now we've got electric cars. I saw an electric lorry delivering for somebody, and it was a joy of silence. We must be better now. This must be more of a scare than the truth.
No. The last time they did material about this, research about it in London, the air is still extremely toxic, because although they may be making smaller efforts and electric cars and stuff, there's just a hell of a lot more people in London. You know, the traffic is rammed everywhere. I mean, that's one of the other reasons I took up cycling, was you're not going to get anywhere if you're in a car in London, because it just takes you hours, you know.
Well, that's why the pollution's bad, though. But one of the reasons that pollution
is stationary.
Yeah. And there's nothing worse than a car just idling away.
Absolutely.
Your miles per gallon's rubbish, so therefore your amount of carbon per mile must be massive.
Oh, that's disastrous. No, I'd get rid of them, definitely. But I've got to say something about this, which is, at Christmas they closed down Oxford Street, as you were saying, Simon. You know, they keep threatening to do that, and I had to go all the way down to Oxford Street to get right down to Marble Arch End. So they closed it down for the shopping period, and they had these huge, almost house-sized Christmas parcels with all these sort of promotional events going on in the street, and everyone's just shopping mad. And I honestly thought, if there is a hell, this is hell, without a doubt. It's like shopping zombie time. It was absolutely terrifying.
But again, you know, it's that double-edged sword. It's save your money, but gosh, thank God the high street's doing well. We get very, very mixed messages. Clive says on the email, simon@bbc.co.uk, there are no cars on Sark in the Channel Islands, and he says it's absolutely fantastic. He says it's great.
Right. Yeah,
absolutely great. But if all private cars were banned from within the M25, I think we would live in a very boring city. Even though I'm a fan of the bus and the tube, I think we'd be living in a dull town.
You would miss probably about 12 o'clock in one of those areas near maybe at some sort of fast food restaurant. You'd miss the of the bass just going through. Is there a BMW around? Oh, there it is. That's normally what you get.
A BMW with matte paint.
Yes.
It will be generally a BMW. Because I find fascinating. I keep seeing these BMWs around town with the matte, not the gloss. And Mel, who's producing, says they've got to be very careful, because if they get done with the bird droppings, that's it.
Really?
But I just think, to me, you'd want a glossy car. Why do you want a matte car?
I can help out. I mean, we're all trying to save money. What I do is I have not washed my car. I'm going to say ever, because it gets washed when it gets serviced. So, I mean, you get kind of a nice matte finish. Admittedly, the car doesn't look black like it should right now. It's more of a browny tinge, but it's a nice matte finish. I'm cool. I just turn up the bass.
I don't think it's going to be any better than the ones I've seen today. Thank you for that, and we'll get some of your thoughts on the councils raking in a lot of money. In fact, £560 £60 million surplus from parking, which eventually they were saying may have to be given back in some ways. 0207 224 2000. Simon Lederman Show, BBC London 94.9. Stephen Allen is comedian, and Jamie Kelsey-Fry is contributing editor of New Internationalist magazine, both reviewing the day. Jamie, can we talk about fracking?
Well, I would love to.
Yeah.
Okay, so the story that one of the stories that's been printed out by your fantastic producer Mel is a story that a lot of your listeners will know about, which is to do with Lord Howe saying fracking should be carried out in the northeast of England, where there are large desolate areas. There's a much bigger story that's happening after this, which is a small village. I think it's in Sussex. Do you guys know about Balcombe?
West Sussex, yeah.
West Sussex, right. So it's an exploratory fracking expedition that's happening there at the moment, and the locals are livid about it, and they're trying to block the trucks going in. Now, this is really interesting whenever this situation arises, because these are people who live in a very beautiful, fairly sleepy village, really, who suddenly have become activists because they completely disagree with what's happening in their backyard. But the story's much wider. There are a huge amount of plans for fracking right across the UK. So for your listeners, a very simple way of describing fracking is it's a form of extreme extraction of fossil fuels. So they drill about 300,000 feet down into the ground, and then they flush that part of the ground, which is the shale part of the strata. They flush it with toxic chemicals, which they won't admit all the ingredients in it. And the idea is that this concoction of chemicals smashes the shale and releases gas or releases oil that they're able to extract. Now look at the evidence, folks. It's very easy to do. It's very easy to look all this up. But it's going to poison your water aquifers. So that means forever your water aquifers down there are poisoned, okay? It also poisons the air, and it also causes climate change, because if we continue to extract fossil fuels, we're still going to be in this disastrous situation in the future. But it's being rushed through. So
Can I balance this, or are you going to do your own balancing?
I will balance it in the sense that, yes, one angle that a lot of people will come back with is we've got to keep the lights on. We have to get energy from somewhere. So if you look at Germany, or if you look at Sweden or Finland or Norway, you already have countries that are switching right over to sustainables and renewables. So if people say, well, there's no other way of getting energy, that's just absolute rubbish. But
in the short term, it also means that in some countries, particularly in America, they have managed to cut down on the amount of coal that's being used, and instead of that, because of fracking, you're using natural gas, which, as you were saying, the concern about global warming has cut down on the pollution in the environment. So I think there is a debate. I mean, they're not doing fracking for fun.
No, they're not doing it for money.
Well, why are they doing it for money? Just explain the financial aspect.
It's an interesting question. So Lord Howe, who I just quoted, he's the father-in-law of Osborne, okay, which is very much worth bearing in mind.
Yeah, no, it's been discussed.
You also want to have a look at a character who's in Parliament. He's not an MP, but he's involved in, I think he's a minister without portfolio. I'm happy to be corrected on that, called Brown as well. These are people, and it happens all the time, these are people who are they're working in politics. They're meant to be representing the people, but they also happen to have very big hands in this industry. Okay, and that's a really frightening fact, because it would suggest quite clearly that decisions have been made that are putting profits before people, profits before the well-being of this country.
But it's not just in this country that fracking takes place. I mean, were it uniquely here, then perhaps there may be a connection you could link. But the fact that somebody has interest in something that is also working in other countries around the world would not necessarily prove that they are in some way contaminated with their views and their actions.
Well, it depends. I mean, in France it's been banned, and they have a huge amount of resources that they could frack if they want, and they banned it because they've looked at the evidence. They've gone, we're not going to do that to our people.
But women can't drive a car in Saudi Arabia. I mean, there's all kinds of things banned in other countries that you wouldn't necessarily want to be banned here.
Whether women can drive in Saudi Arabia or not, it's not going to affect whether we have a sustainable future or disastrous future, is it? But this is. And what's on a lighter side, okay. It's lovely to see ordinary people who have never been activists in their lives suddenly becoming activists. So I've just had a meeting.
Well, is it actually completely and utterly hypocritical? You know, the people of Sussex or Surrey, wherever the Balcombe lies, and I'm sure they're wonderful people, and I go through there a lot if I go down to the south coast and places like Beachy Head and Eastbourne and Brighton. But the people who've never been involved and suddenly only get involved. You see, you get involved in everything, Stephen. This is Jamie. Jamie gets involved in many, many areas that he feels very passionately about. And so for that reason, many of the views he says I respect. Because the reason why I respect it is because you don't just because it affects you, you do it because it affects everybody. This is something slightly different. And I wonder why you are so supportive of the people of Balcombe.
You're talking about NIMBY, aren't you?
Yeah.
Not in my backyard, exactly. Really, really good point. So you do have a lot of people who've gone down there now who aren't from that area at all, and they're coming from exactly the same place I am, because if we don't stop it right, if we don't nip this in the bud, it's going to happen right across the country. And then it goes back to the classic situation of the Polish priest during the Second World War when the Nazis were there, and he said, first they came to my village and they took the Jews, but I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't say anything. Then they took the gays, then they took the Romanis, then they took the socialists, the communists, and then they came for me, and there was no one there to speak up for me. So unless we nip this in the bud now, it's just going to spread right across the country.
Bill Gates agrees with you, because when you type fracking into Microsoft Word, it gives you an underlined red to try and get you to correct it. But what I must say is, sorry, I'm so sorry.
When it suggests corrected spellings, what are the other words?
I can't mention the corrected spelling on
Bill
this
Gates is very harsh.
It's very, very harsh. And look, I have done my best to balance this. I'm not an expert in the world of fracking, but if you are, because everything has a pro, everything has a con, and there are, I'm sure, equal debates to be had on both sides. We'd love to hear from you and welcome those calls on 0207 224 2000. What do you make of this, Stephen? I don't know how much you know of fracking or indeed understand the ramifications of it.
I love the fact that by bringing pros and cons in, this is going to muddy the water. If there's one thing we can do with fracking,
it's doing a lot more to the waters,
yes,
according to young Jamie.
See, I am fundamentally a scientist. Pre-comedy, I was the massive nerd. University, I did sciencey things. So, and also, I describe myself as a pragmatist. So I think, you know what, if you found something that can help us energy-wise in a way that would be great, this is, you know, I'll have a little read, I'll do some research. And I was reading some article that said that if we use fracking, we could get enough gas to give us power for 10 years. And I thought, 10 years? That's rubbish, isn't it? For 10 years, I'm at an age where 10 years zooms by. I'd want something that lasts a bit longer than 10 years. You're going to drill loads of holes. I don't even like drilling holes in the walls of my house, just in case I go off that painting. If you're going to drill holes just for 10 years worth of gas, then I don't think this is necessarily the cleverest idea. Although, this is where normally people then diverge from my viewpoint. I think, well, if there's something that can provide a lot of power without producing carbon, it's nuclear, and everyone panics. But if you do nuclear wrong, it's terrible. If you don't, then it is a source of power that is very, very, well, it's not sustainable technically, isn't it? It's not coming straight from the sun, but it's a hell of a lot better for us.
See, if we had weather like this all the time, we wouldn't have so many of the problems that we're worried about, because we could get it all from solar energy. And we have a great debate about the huge wind farms, which you either believe are beautiful. If you happen to live about 50 miles away from them, you tend to think they're beautiful. And if they're on your doorstep, you think they're awful. There is no power that everyone can agree on. Largely, arguably, I'd imagine you're more likely, Jamie, to agree on wind power.
Wind and solar, and tidal. But what I agree, what much more to the point, this government, like all governments, should be investing enormously in sustainable and renewable energy technology and sort of doing much more research into it, because it's the only way that the species, let alone little villages in England, but the actual species, the only way we're going to have a decent future is if we deal with runaway climate change immediately, you know. And it's not some sort of scare story that I read in some dodgy little hippie magazine. You know, I work for New Internationalist, so their research is absolutely erudite, and they've been writing about it for a really long time. Runaway climate chaos is the worst thing that this species has ever faced, way beyond any war. And we're not really doing anything about it, we're just ambling along. But this specific case about a government that's gone the dash for gas, you know, Osborne's saying we want to be a hub, an international hub for gas. The tie-ins with the, you know, this revolving door between people who work for energy companies and then are working in the ministry and vice versa. You know, this is a disgrace, because it's actually got nothing to do with the well-being of the people. It's got everything to do with corporatocracy, so corporations calling the shots and not individuals. I'm
going to hold it there, only because, one, I'll get complaints because I can't balance it all out, and secondly, fortunately, we're right at 11:30. We're going to get your thoughts. 0207 224 2000. A passionate disagreement with fracking, and if you've got any views in favour or against, we'll debate it happily in the next half hour. 0207 224 2000. Plus, as you heard there, we were talking about the councils that are charging a huge amount of money for parking. They're getting a £560 million surplus as a result. And coming up, we're going to talk a bit about Google Glasses, Bradley Manning, and the reasons why selfish people potentially might not be so long for this world. Be warned. I'm Stephen Allen, who's a comedian, and Jamie Kelsey-Fry, who is contributing editor to New Internationalist magazine, both with us for the hour. Before we go on, actually, Stephen, we always talk about when we can see or hear or read our contributors next. You're regularly to be seen on stage in this city.
I am indeed, although the topical show that I do on Mondays is having a summer break. Although, on my YouTube channel, all of the clips from all of the last topical shows from, I don't know, a couple of months' worth, they're all on there. So if you can track me down on social media. And then I'm gigging...
So your YouTube channel is Stephen Allen?
Do you know what? I've got a really bad feeling that on Twitter I'm Mr. Stephen Allen. On YouTube I think I'm Mr. Steve Allen because the Stephen was gone. And I thought, you know what would make it really confusing? It's just make it one letter difference so no one's got a clue. But if, Google me, you'll find it. The YouTube channel's doing all right.
Who's done your marketing? The same people that did Cinzano. Was it Cinzano that failed? Everyone thought they were drinking martini. I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, it was.
Who did the ads with? Who was the Reggie?
Luton Airport.
Luton Airport.
Yeah.
No, not Luton Airport.
Right.
It was. No, it was Joan Collins and Leonard Rossiter on the plane.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Was it Cinzano? And the trouble is, everybody loved the ads, but assumed it was for martini.
That's right. Yeah.
I think it was Cinzano. Anyway.
Well, we can't remember ourselves now, do we?
No,
So it
now
didn't
we
work.
can't. I think one of them went out of business.
Yeah.
Fantastic ad. I would thoroughly recommend. Once you've looked up Stephen Allen on YouTube, look up this ad on YouTube as well. What about you, Jamie? The next issue of New Internationalist is out when?
Oh, it's monthly. So, in fact, the next one is a dual monthly. So, I think it's August and September we've got coming out next. It's about pirates, actually. Each issue focuses on one theme in particular. So, there's about a body of the magazine, about 9 pages or 10 pages that focuses on that, and then we have all these other regular things, so people can catch up on issues of global justice in the rest of the mag. But yeah, pirating is a very interesting story. You know, as everyone knows about. Tankers will need military guards because of pirates from Somalia, etc. So we're studying that one.
Those stories are so moving, and when you find people who go on the cruise or go on a very small craft and are taken and are there for such a long time, and it's a huge risk. It seems.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but. I haven't read the material that we've got coming out the next one yet, because they're just finishing it, but I would imagine that they will have a lot of very interesting angles on it, about why it's happening, what kind of industry will be built up around protecting the ships, and just wait and see.
Give us the website.
Newint, NEWINT.org. It's an absolute cracking magazine. Anyone who's listening to me knows that already anyway. It's been going for 40 years,
Brilliant. Right, can we please, Stephen, talk about these very strange scenes of people photographing rather interesting people on back on public transport again?
Yes, but
tell us the story, because I was not aware of this craze.
They've done a survey into the way that we use our camera phones, and the bit that really stands out for me, and admittedly this is not a massive percent, but more than 8% of UK adults have admitted taking pictures of strangers that they find attractive on public transport, and it also lists other places like in the doctor's surgery. Firstly, even if you have to take pictures of people on the tube, leave them alone if they're in the doctor's. What are you doing? The people are ill. I mean, and also, you don't look your best when you're in the doctor's waiting room.
But maybe that's the point. My God, if you look like this now, what on earth are you going to look like once the pills have worked?
Imagine this without a big red nose.
Yeah.
But I didn't realise you were allowed to do this.
So it is legal to photograph strangers?
I don't know if anyone's ever been caught for taking a picture of someone else. There's one flip side to this. There's a thing on Twitter called, is it Tube Crush? And that's where people tweet pictures of people they find attractive. Now, I use the tube an awful lot.
And no one's ever... Is that what you're going to...
Not a single... And I make an effort. Right? Not today, because this is radio. But if I'm doing a gig, I'm in a shirt and tie, I'm looking good, people are looking in my direction, I'm thinking, come on, there's Wi-Fi on all the tube stations now. Would it be that much trouble to take a picture of me and tweet it? And I don't know if you're allowed to tweet yourself on Tube Crush. Do a selfie. Is that...
Try a selfie, I love that.
Can I selfie myself?
What I'm thinking about is how they try and do it surreptitiously. So I'm imagining what they're doing is they're pretending that they're texting while they're getting the phone and lining it up on you and then clicking like this, really. But have you never had that, though?
Say if you're sat on the tube, someone's on the opposite side and their camera's at the right angle, you think, oh, this is the one I've been waiting for. Someone's taking a picture, and then they've got their headphones in and they're watching a TV show.
But they may have done it. And you simply wouldn't know.
I really do check.
I find it quite interesting because in the Metro each day there is a kind of a Tube Crush style column, and for the people who are concerned about strange behaviour in a city, to encourage the words that are written in this paper, which say things like, "I saw you in the red scarf getting off the train at High Street, Ken. You work in the building on 288 the Broadway. Oh no, I mean, you think you followed them? Please, can we have a drink?" And you think, well, who are you?
Yeah, that's very frightening.
But isn't that? And this is in a national newspaper every day.
Yeah, they've taken pictures. If you're writing to the Metro, you've taken some pictures. Although, right, so the stats are 8%. This is, I don't know if this is my interpretation. 8% have taken pictures of people they find attractive. I think what is more likely that a larger percentage have taken pictures of people that they don't find attractive, because certainly there's a lot of people on Twitter who do that. If someone falls asleep and they dribble down themselves, that's a picture that hits the internet. If someone has
David Miliband was papped in that, wasn't he asleep on the tube, and they got a picture of him some time ago.
That's the risk these days, isn't it? I see a lot of pictures of people with it's like the tube version of, you know, the emails that go around of the people of Walmart in America. The people with bellies hanging out in places where you shouldn't even have a belly. Those kind of people. That's, I reckon, way more people photograph. That's the only downside. If someone takes a picture of you, you think, oh, this is going to be, they find me attractive. I can't help thinking it might be on a different website.
Here is David Miliband. I've just found it on the from earlier this year. I think asleep on the tube.
Oh, bless.
Taken at 3 p.m. If you want to find, just put into the internet David Miliband asleep on tube. I knew there was that. And there's been quite a few quite famous and quite well known people who've been called out. But he's not. Look, his legs are wide apart. His left arm is
credit where it's due, though. That arm there is top grade sleeping on public transport, because what he's
really
done,
is.
He's got load bearing on the bone, not on the muscle. So when you fall asleep, you don't fall.
He's done it very well. But he looks exhausted. He looks absolutely exhausted. Although, of course, I think he's working in America now. Jamie, what do you make of this? I mean, I don't know the legalities, so if you're inspired and finding this quite an exciting prospect, next time you get the 24 bus, don't, because I don't know whether it's legal or not. But what do you make the idea of... I mean, presumably it could be quite flattering to have your picture taken by a stranger.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, and as Steve's saying, though, very often it may be for the completely different reasons, where people are going, "Oh, he looks absolutely ridiculous. Let's take a picture of him." But no, I think it's lovely. I mean, it's incredible that we've got such a huge city and people are so lonely. I know it's a bit of a corny thing to say, but it is the truth. And we were talking earlier before we came on, and neither of you guys have done this much, but go on a tube, particularly DLR, so it's quieter, because Steve wisely pointed out it's quite hard to have conversations on the normal underground. Start a conversation. I did one the other day on DLR, because I got on and I can't handle the fact that everybody around me was on their little phones. And, you know, life is so short. Why are you doing that?
Well, they were checking to see if their pictures are on tube.
You know, so I start conversations, you know, and it's brilliant, because the first split second is weirdo alert. And then after that, you know, because I'm being genuine, and I'm just saying, look, short call, it's a short journey, and you can do your phones any time. So are you having a nice day? And people...
Oh, God.
Is that your opener?
It is. Okay, and it works a charm every time.
Really?
It's brilliant. Yeah, honestly...
Because you always get a seat, there's always a seat next to you, there's a row behind and a row in front. It works perfectly.
People want to talk with each other. We're naturally much more sort of communal and cooperative and friendly than we actually allow ourselves to be in this modern rat race of a city. And it's wonderful, some of the things that people say, you know.
Are you running a risk with an opener like, "Are you having a nice day?" If people say, yes, brilliant, this conversation can move on. But if they say no and tell you their troubles, man alive, what cord do I have to pull to end this right now?
But, you know, you can say, "Oh, this is my stop," at the next stop, you know, obviously then move to another carriage.
It took you 5 hours to get home.
I don't mind that either. Human beings are very interesting. If they're having a hard time, I don't mind listening and talking about it, and, you know, but generally it's brilliant. But always, at the end of it, people have gone, "Thank you," and that means a lot. Because, you know, people famously, we live in London where people always are saying this, "I haven't spoken to my neighbours in 10 years. I don't even know their names." They're only next door. Go and talk to them. Stop them and it's that split second. The first split second is...
Mel spoke to his neighbour today.
Did he?
I won't tell you the full deal. Can I tell you the full days? I can do.
Go on.
There's 3 girls live next door. He likes them all, but there's one he likes the most. He spoke to the one he likes the most.
Wow.
And he's a quick worker, because he's been there 2 years, and she's been next to... She's next door. She's been next door for 2 years, and his opening gambit was, "All right."
Oh, bless.
Whatever it takes.
And they spoke for 20 minutes.
Brilliant. Could lead to a beautiful thing next time.
She'll
She'll lead the Never again. Oh, okay. So it's that 20 minutes. Could lead to sugar.
Did you hear that?
Yes, it could lead to a bowl of sugar next time, and who knows, you know. I think it's lovely. But I'm sure most of the listeners who are out there are agreeing, because we do all like, we are very convivial and social, you know. It's just ridiculous that you sit on a bus with 100 people around you and no one's talking. To put it another way around, so I've lived in lots of countries around the world when I was younger. I did a lot of travelling, and then when they come here, they're going down the street saying, hi, hello, to complete strangers, and everyone's going, what are you looking at me for? And it totally shocks them, you know. I was in Kenya in the 80s, and there's a beautiful story about this young guy who had won his choir. He'd living out in the north of Kenya, in the countryside, in the rural area. And his local choir had won this sort of prize that meant that they're going to come to London. Now, in Kenya at that time, you can go anywhere in Kenya and knock on a door and go, Hodi, and total strangers, you just knock on any door and go Hodi, and the people living there have to go Karibu, which means welcome, and they have to bring you in, offer you a meal and a bed for the night.
I can't see that working in this country. Can you, Stephen? I cannot.
So you know,
you try and go in a restaurant and use their toilet, which you're legally allowed to do. You know, you can't do it.
So this kid, he was saying, so he's telling me all about that, and he was saying, you know, can I do that in London? I was going, no,
you can have a go. You can have a go.
It's such a shame, you know.
So for you, Stephen, what would your opening gambit be if you were going to embark upon a conversation with somebody on the tube?
It's difficult, because I think I'm genuinely not as sociable as you think I am as being part of the human race. Because I go running every so often now, and actually I visited my parents back in the north, and if you just walk down the street, some people will go, morning, and I'm just like kung fu stance straight away, like, what do you want from me? So I don't know, if I was on the tube and so you're saying I had to start a conversation, I don't know, I guess I would open with kind of,
you do your stand-up.
This is awkward, isn't it?
This is awkward.
Sorry about this. Please don't mace me, would be the get it in early, you know.
Get it in early. I've got a different view of people, I think, than you.
Carol on the Facebook says, regarding fracking that we were talking about earlier on, there was an interesting documentary on Horizon recently, if anybody wants to know more about the health and or environmental effects of fracking.
That's actually, if it's the one I'm thinking about, that's one of the few good sides of fracking, is the fact that you then get free gas in your water supply. Who doesn't love the fact you can set fire to water? That'd be amazing, wouldn't it? I need some marshmallows, but I also want to watch them. What can I do? Problem solved.
Thank you for that. Stephen Allen and Jamie Kelsey-Fry reviewing the day. It's the Simon Lederman Show on BBC London 94.9. We're taking your calls, 0207 224 2000. Jamie, can we talk about
Bradley Manning?
Yes, if you like.
Brilliant. It's a fantastic story. Everyone's very aware of Bradley Manning, and also Snowden's been in the papers again today.
He's now left the airport.
He's left the airport. It's quite amazing. Edward Snowden has left the airport. One of the most exciting interviews I've done in my career working for the Internationalist was I had an interview with Julian Assange before he went into the embassy. And he was a fascinating guy to meet, obviously, and what he's responsible for, I think, is really, really extraordinary. And for a long time, the focus was on Julian Assange, but, you know, Manning is very important, because without these whistleblowers, and they are whistleblowers, there's nothing else. Without these people, then, you know, WikiLeaks has no relevance. There's a film coming out called The Fifth Estate. My fantastic love of my life, Anita, worked on The Fifth Estate, and it's going to be a blinder, and it's about Julian Assange. We've got that guy, Cumberbatch, I think his name is, Sherlock Holmes. Benedict Cumberbatch is an amazing Julian Assange. But what we've got here is an extraordinary situation where he's not been found guilty of aiding the enemy. He's been found guilty of espionage. So,
which is the act of a traitor.
That's the language that they're using, traitor. But who's the enemy? If he's not been found guilty of aiding the enemy, but he's found being guilty of espionage, so who is the enemy?
Well, in all kinds of...
We are.
But there are things that general populations should never know.
What,
you know,
like,
the code for nuclear
really
weapons, the door code for a bank. I mean, there are things that actually are quite secret that we shouldn't know. And actually, governments can't work without secrecy.
Yes, of course, that's absolutely right. But he's not revealing door codes into houses. He's revealing how the army are behaving in Afghanistan, in Iraq, etc. What also, it goes back to Ellsberg, doesn't it? The guy who revealed the secrets about Vietnam. He got a very similar charge of espionage, but then it was absolutely quashed and he was released, etc.
But then don't go into the Secret Service, or in his case, don't go into the military.
Yeah, well, why do you have to give up your humanity to become a soldier? I'd imagine all soldiers listening would go, no, of course you don't.
But you do follow orders, as you probably just heard there.
You follow orders, but you've got an initiative. But look, let's get back to the key point. he's being painted as a traitor, which is the language that you've just used. But really, you're looking at people who have actually risked the rest of their lives and their liberty because they so strongly believe that their country needs to know what their government is really doing. This is what Snowden's done. And what's interesting with Snowden, you know, the excuse of Snowden, the first thing our government did was, we're not using any British airplanes to fly him out of there. That's the first thing our government did. And everyone's going, well, what is this PRISM program that he's revealed, okay? It's something that's to do with watching Facebook, and it's to do with watching YouTube, and it's to do with watching Twitter, and it's to do with watching your emails. Okay, well, and it's because we need protection from terrorists. I do not know any terrorists out there who are going to say on Facebook, I've got a bomb in the Mini, don't tell anyone.
Do you not think...
So you are being watched. Us lot listening, you know, we are being watched. That's very, very important to bear in mind. We did a whole article about the technical revolution, which is called the open source revolution. Just before Christmas, New Internationalist. And a very important fact, chew this one for a bit. When the phone was invented, it took 41 years before the police needed to get a judge to allow them to listen to your phones. 41 years they were able to listen to anyone they wanted. Now we're in the similar stage. Tim Berners-Lee only invented the internet fairly recently. And at the moment, the real commodity is us, our knowledge and information on us. Now, if PRISM isn't really to be watching for terrorists, because obviously it's not, terrorists don't use Facebook, it's us. So what are they watching us for? What kind of knowledge are they accumulating? Okay.
But why would you be worried? Sorry, just to...
Well, we've been here before. Why I would be worried personally, okay, is if I was on Facebook, which I'm not, and I was tweeting, I was putting up articles about fracking, for example, all right? So that would have me, that would eventually, you know, the programme of PRISM, the way I understand it, that would put me into a certain group straight away. Watch these guys. I'd become an environmental extremist immediately just for putting an article up saying fracking is absolutely dangerous and the people in Balcombe are brilliant. So that's me in that level straight away.
But it's no different from Stephen. If you want to come in, just come in, because we both need to probably fight a bit about this. Whatever you agree is right or wrong. It's no different from going to a university and having the clubs and the membership you had passed on to somebody, which we know happens. It's no different than people, if you wrote a letter to a national newspaper saying fracking is all, say you were doing this 20 years ago, that would be monitored somewhere. Governments monitor people. It's the way life is. It's nothing new, is it?
Yeah, but I think that we're all very relieved to know that certain areas of the government and the Secret Service monitor people to make sure of our safety and our security so that we don't have bombs going off. You know, I'm old enough to remember the IRA days, and I remember how many... I actually lost a friend, the husband of someone I talked with was blown up in Piccadilly, and, you know, he was from New Zealand, for goodness sake. This is different. This is watching everyone in this country. This is recording all your phones. This is keeping all your emails. That's
Stephen,
really, really dangerous.
Surely the only reason a government has never done that before is because they couldn't do that before. This is and I'm not as surprised to find out that it took 40 years to have to get a tap on a phone when the phone was invented. That's the nature of the speed of technology. In the same way that when a phone was invented, the next invention would have been quicker than the entire humanity that it took to invent it. So that side of it, I can see why that would happen. But the reason, I'm not even sure the government know why they would be doing this. It just seems like you have the ability to collect more information than you can process right now. They do that because at some point they'll work out how to process it.
Well, I think PRISM, the part of that PRISM programme is it also processes, because obviously they haven't got enough people to read everything.
Do you know,
there's programmes that will pull stuff out about people and put stuff together, which is what's frightening.
PRISM was the one the hacking the fibre optics. Was it?
Snowden is that's PRISM is the programme that Snowden revealed information about.
Because that was of the things that aren't blamed on the NSA. The GCHQ was getting data from the fibre optics that go through British waters, and there was a lovely bit in one of the articles where they said, "Well, we've not been doing anything evil with the data because there's way too much of it," and that's not a reassuring.
That's not a good answer.
We've not been evil. We don't have the time.
It's like a 5-year. I didn't eat that chocolate. Look, there's an apple over there. It's not the same. It's not the same answer.
I've never cheated on you with my work schedule. It's not the right sentiment, is it?
But the bit that sticks out in your man pointed out, gave me the Guardian article about Bradley Manning, and there's a great line that's been used quite a lot. They're saying, well, no, it's not that bad. We have decided, sentence hearing on Wednesday, that no instances were ever found of any individual killed by enemy forces as a result of having been named in the releases. Read what all of WikiLeaks is about. It's nothing to do with soldiers being, the results of the material that comes from WikiLeaks. We're not talking about that results in American soldiers or British soldiers being killed. The material shows the hundreds of thousands of civilians who are being murdered. And that's what's terrifying. It's thousands and thousands of civilians that are being murdered. And that's why WikiLeaks is important. We should pull back and look at why we're having these wars and why are we conducting them in this way and why are we getting away with it? Why isn't the world up in arms about these disgraceful wars?
Sharon says in Crystal Palace, Snowden's seeking asylum in a country that's killed dissidents and locked up Pussy Riot, ? What a self-serving hypocrite. I hate the way that he and Assange have been adopted by the trendy liberal elites, says Sharon.
Well, yeah, Sharon's absolutely right. It was the only country that was going to take Snowden. So, yeah,
and indeed the Ecuadorian embassy for...
Yes, yeah.
For Assange.
I absolutely agree with Sharon in the sense that I don't think there are any countries that are squeaky clean at all. But then, the focus often gets pushed on to the whistleblowers themselves rather than the material that they've released. And that's what I'm very passionate about, is for people to actually look at that material and see what it says about our governments and what we're allowing them, how we're allowing them to continue to behave. It's just
Thank you for that. I've got so many other things I could say, but I do want to give Stephen a chance to end the hour.
Yes.
And I want to talk about Google Glasses.
Do you know what? This story could almost blend in, couldn't it? Because in the future, we're going to be wearing glasses that will know exactly where we are.
Thinking and where we're looking.
What we're thinking. You've got to step out, maybe, yeah. Although, actually, that's true. It will know what you're looking at, wouldn't it?
Well, we know what you're thinking. If I'm looking at Jamie,
Wow.
they know I'm thinking. If I'm looking at a door, they think, well, he must be quiet. But then
In that case, I am going to get arrested the next time there's a heat wave like this. Wow.
You are allowed to drive a car with the top down. It's fine. Well, what are you doing? What are you doing?
You meant to ask her if you can take a top down first. No, that's yes. This is Google Glass. Although this is to do with driving. So in case you don't know, because I was talking to someone on Twitter earlier on, they didn't know what Google Glass was. It's going to be they're a pair of glasses, and it's like a personal computer, but you wear it. Wearable tech. This is the future. And it'll do some of the functions of a mobile phone, really. You can check your emails, you probably surf the web, you can watch little videos, and they're already getting on top of this, training the police to find people if they are driving wearing them. In the same way that you're not allowed to drive and use your mobile phone, they don't want you to drive using Google Glass, which makes sense because you should be paying attention to the road.
Because as I understand it, there's the display is in your periphery vision. So how you wear the glasses, it will be perceived to you that it's just in the distance, almost like a sat-nav would be.
Yeah. Have you seen the film The Jerk, Steve Martin?
Oh, it's one of the best films ever.
He invents the little clip for the glasses and everyone goes cross-eyed. Yeah. I can't help thinking, cut to the future, not a problem. Google will be sued for so much money as everyone gets a Columbo stare.
Absolutely.
This has got to happen.
Like that.
But it's such a shame because we've covered it. I'm a nerd. I love the tech. Why can't there be... My smartphone has a driving mode, right? So I tap it in driving mode. I can't answer a phone call during it. It'll just send a text out going, I'm driving, so it's fine.
That's clever.
So why don't they just do a driving mode? In fact, they've not finished designing Google Glass yet, so Google, if you're listening, and if you're not, speak to the NSA, they'll tell you about this. Why not just invent a driving mode? Because having an extra view in your glasses as you drive could be amazing. Parking would be brilliant. You can have a little webcam back there, just Wi-Fi it through to the glasses.
And anybody from outside would say, wow, this guy's great. Look at the space he's got into. One of the things that fascinates me about all this stuff, the smartphone revolution, the Twitter, the Google Glasses, etc., and I suppose it goes a little bit to some of your fears of everything having a secondary level that we don't understand. If the government said, you must check this piece of glass 50 times every day to see who's contacted you, to reply to them, to check information out, we'd be like, I ain't doing that.
I'm not doing
that. Somehow, because no one's telling us to do it, we do it.
Yeah.
Don't you think that the way we are slaves to all of this technology is amazing?
I don't feel like I'm a slave to it because
that's how the government do it. Maybe the
you.
government is making us we don't know. What it is, the government say, invent a smartphone, let people enjoy using it, become addicted, all of their life is on there, and we can get it.
Well, yeah, it started with the TV, didn't it? You know, the idiot box and the whole idea of people just staring at a small rectangle in the room.
Control.
About the TV, though, I often have to defend this, and I know that in the world you can't defend it, but theoretically people just say, oh, kids shouldn't watch TV, they should read books. Now imagine a world where all the books were The World According to Clarkson, and all the TV was a BBC4 documentary.
Yeah.
So it's not the medium that's the problem, it's the content.
Yeah,
and everyone assumes, TVs are bad for you.
Yeah, no,
I've seen some rubbish books.
Yeah, absolutely. I was at the best funeral I've been to in my life, actually, earlier this year, which was Bruce Reynolds, the great train robber, who was a friend of mine, and at the sort of wake afterwards, because there was amazing people at this funeral, and I was getting into...
All bent or just some of them?
Well, a lot of the people I was chatting away with, after a while, I was thinking, I don't know what you actually do or what your history is.
Where is my wallet?
Yeah, no. But anyway, Guy says something actually really interesting. So we're talking about exactly this. I think that's a really good idea. What you were saying earlier about if the government told us to look at these little screens, about 50 times a day, we'd all refuse to do it. But we were talking about technology and how everything's got faster and faster. And he said, the world's got quicker and quicker and quicker, but we don't seem to be getting anywhere. And I thought that was a really interesting way of looking at it. I don't think that us techie people living in London, this fast rat race life with all this technology, all these like Google glasses that are coming up in a year, I don't think that makes us any wiser or cleverer in any way whatsoever compared to someone who's completely cut away from technology. I would actually suggest, I'd like to see what your listeners think, it actually makes us less wise. Because
it probably does. Listen, I've got to end it there
info,
because we're out of time. But it's a fascinating, and I wish you'd mentioned the train robbery funeral
next
earlier.
Time.
Yeah, next time maybe. 0207 224 2000 is our number. You can email simon@bbc.co.uk. Many thanks to Stephen Allen, who is a comedian, and Jamie Kelsey-Fry, who's contributing editor to New International magazine. We find out more about them earlier in the programme. If you missed it, just after 11:30, we talked about how you can find out more about both our guests, and hopefully we'll see you back here again very soon.
Thanks for
coming in.
You take care, buddy.
It is 1 minute to midnight, and Sarah Eustace has the headlines on the way next.